The Wood Whisperer is sponsored by Woodcraft. Just get started. Well, it's hard to believe greeting card season is already upon us. Now, in our house, we like to display these things in various different ways, but recently Nicole ran across something at Target that was just a very simple strip of wood with 2 slots, and she asked if I could make something a little bit nicer. So that's what we have here. It is a little bit nicer strip of wood with a couple of slots. You can see I've done a little bit of lasering in the front with some seasons greetings there, and just a couple other details that I think makes it look kind of slick. You'll also notice we have a contrasting species for a filler piece in there, and then the slots that we cut here are actually kind of snug. So this piece, even if you were to knock it over, slide it around, the cards aren't going to fall out as easily as they might if it was a wider slot. This is also something that I'm going to try to batch out because I think this makes not only great gifts, but it's also something that if you happen to sell at craft shows, that might be an easy way to use up some scrap material and make a few bucks as well. I think people are going to love these things. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so I've got a mix of wood species here, some light stuff, dark stuff, got a lot of walnut, and you might be wondering why I'm using walnut on something like this. Walnut's pretty expensive. This particular piece of 8/4 stock contained the pith, and it was a good portion of this board. If you don't know, the pith is the center of the tree. So that generally is unstable in terms of the wood around it. We typically try to cut it out. And this is the kind of project where it really isn't gonna matter because it's just a standalone piece of wood. So some of these pieces will contain that pith. I'll try to plane it out, but if it remains in the final product, I'm not that worried about it. A regular piece of furniture might be a different story. So that's the reason why you're seeing so much walnut here. All right, so these pieces are roughly cut to about 24 inches. I think 22 to 24 is gonna be a good range for these as a finish dimension, but right now we just gotta joint and plane them down so they're all nice and even. So the part that you didn't see was me rough cutting all of these pieces at the bandsaw. Each stick now needs a pass or 2 on adjacent faces to square them up. At the planer, I could then mill the other 2 faces and bring each blank down to 1 3/4 square. Now, with the table saw set to 5 degrees, which happens to be the ideal greeting card angle as per the North Pole Department of Standards and Practices, I can cut a 3/4 inch deep slot. At this point, my buddy Jason showed up to help me out, though I'm pretty sure he's a spy sent by Philip Morley to steal me secret formula.
It's me secret formula.
Because we're making a ton of these things, we have to cut the first slot into all the pieces before moving the fence and cutting the second slot. Now, once you have these 2 slots cut, you kind of have an opportunity to bail at this point if you want a simpler version. This 1/8 inch slot here, it's not the end of the world. And if you have like a thin kerf blade, you can get that a little bit smaller and the greeting cards will just kind of flop around just a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. So just wanted to point out that this could be a stopping point for you. You don't have to go to the next step, which is to clear out this material so we can make room for a slightly wider piece of stock of a contrasting species. So now I've replaced the blade with a dado stack to clear out the rest of the material. That's a lot to remove in one go, so make sure that you're using a featherboard and a decent amount of downward pressure. And once we have these grooves cut, we gotta work on a little piece that's gonna fit right in there. Basically, just kind of like a parallelogram. It should drop right in. Now the spacing is gonna be completely up to you, but I decided on about a 30, maybe a little over a 32nd of an inch on each side, and roughly that equates to 3 playing cards on each side. We'll be using these as spacers to just determine if we have the right sizing here, right? So how do we cut this parallelogram? Well, it starts with a regular board. I've got my blade tilted to that same 5 degrees that we used before, and now we'll just make 1 cut on the edge. So now with that 5-degree edge, we could flip this piece over, put the 5-degree edge against our fence, and now we just have to carefully sneak up on the fit. Once you have the fit you want, you could just rip a bunch of pieces off the wider blank. Now before I can glue these pieces together, we want to do a little bit of preparation. Some things are just easier to do now. A lot of these edges are really sharp. You might have inconsistent bottom to this little trough here. So hand tools are a good way to clean that stuff up. And I want to show you some of the tools from our sponsor Woodcraft that I think you're really going to like. So first of all, we're going to look at the depth of the cut that we've made here. At the table saw, when you're removing that much material, it's almost inevitable that you'll be a little bit inconsistent with the depth. Now, this is not super critical for a project like this, but this does teach you some good skills and things that will help in other projects. I've got a little bit of material here that I think I could probably remove with a router plane. This little guy is really handy to have in the shop, and you can see this little piece that's coming up here. This is just a little bit of leftover material. But it's nice because I could set my blade for a particular depth, and then anything sitting above that point is cut away. All right, so we'll make sure we're nice and clean on the bottom, giving us a good surface to glue our internal strip to. Now on the top here, I have my machined surface, so it's kind of like if you were able to look really closely, you would see a whole bunch of little lines. This is something you could sand away, but I always say that if you could make shavings instead of dust, you're better off. So I will just use the Wood River Smoother to clean up the top here in just a couple passes. Clean up those machine marks. Maybe one more. Nice. Then I'm going to finish it off with one of my favorite little planes. This is just an apron plane, but it's a small block plane that is just perfect for getting into tight spaces like this where I could chamfer that sharp edge. And we can also do our outside edges too right now if we wanted to, but I'm really concerned about just getting this thing glued in there and what's going to be hard to do later. All right, so once I have that eased, I'll use some sandpaper. Just kind of ease it and round it over. And then we can do a similar treatment to this piece. Chamfer the top. Okay, a couple passes and then a little bit of sanding. And I kind of forgot that it's not a bad idea to do a little smoothing on the top of this piece too. And with all that done, we should be ready for the glue up. So thanks Woodcraft for being a sponsor of the show. And this is just kind of a reminder that even if you're a power tool junkie, hand tools can sometimes save you time, make things easier, and man, they're just so much fun to use when they're well tuned, like this Wood River hand plane is. All right, let's get back to the glue up. The key here is to use as little glue as possible since you don't want it spooging up into the slots. I'm using Titebond 3, but any type of wood glue would do the trick. My trusty Star Trek cards make great spacers. Anybody up for a game of Fizbin? And if you get that joke, we can be friends.
How lucky you are! How wonderful for you!
Now with the miter saw, I'll tilt the head to 10 degrees and cut each end. This is just for style points, so you can adjust to taste or leave it square. Back at the bench, each face gets a pass or two with the smoother to remove any machine marks. All edges get a little 1/8 inch round over to soften the look and feel, and those profiles get cleaned up with sanding. By the way, our Wood Whisperer specials happen to be on sale right now for 20% off at backsideSandpaper.com, just for the holiday season. And don't forget to sand the end grain. On a piece like this, it'll be pretty noticeable if you leave the end grain with a machine cut, so don't do that. Now, to dress these things up with some hot laser action. I mark the center of the piece so I can easily align it with the design on the Eon laser. I'm only running one just to test the settings, but later I'll be batching them out. All right, that's looking pretty darn good. Now we need to think about a finish. The finish really can be just about anything. This is really a lightly used item. It's something that's just for display purposes. So anything that you apply well will probably work. I would recommend, especially if you're doing this last minute, that you might look at a quicker drying finish, something like shellac or lacquer. But if you have the luxury of time, you could use any classic oil-based finish or hard wax oil. And that's what I'm going to use here today, Natural One Coat. So let me show you how to apply it. All right, so we've got the oil and wax in a 3-to-1 ratio. Okay, so it's 3 of the oil and wax and then 1 of the hardener. You don't need a whole lot of this stuff. A little bit goes a long way. In fact, I'm probably making way more than I need for just a single card holder here. But I don't have just a single one. I got a ton of these things right now. Oh boy, too many. Okay, once that's mixed up, then I just like to use a white Scotch-Brite and apply that to the surface. I don't know if you noticed, but my center line that I had on there for the lasering, put a little pencil line on the bottom. And this pad just has enough abrasion to it, very little, but just enough that it kind of got rid of that pencil mark for me. So that's a bonus. Now this kind of finish is really just a one and done. You don't need to put multiple coats for something like this, especially if I'm batching them out. I'm not going to do multiple coats on there. You don't necessarily need a bunch of finish down in the slot, so whatever happens to get in there is fine. Okay, I'm just going to let that soak for a few minutes. All right, so after, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, most of that oil should be absorbed into the wood. Whoops. And I like to do a 2-rag wipe off like this, so I never really want to contact the surface with my gloves. That'll just keep putting, not fingerprints, but glove marks on there. So I like to handle it with 2 and just wipe as I go. Gotta be careful inside the laser area here. You don't want to really rub too hard because you could get, breaking apart the paper towel. So sometimes you just kind of bunch it up and dab it in there to get the excess off. All right, so this guy will be pretty dry to the touch almost immediately. Usually I let them sit for a couple hours before handling, and full cure takes a few days, but that's really, again, something that's not a critical item in terms of durability, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Man, that looks good. All right, here we go. It's looking pretty good. I like the dark color scheme, but the real question is, what do you like better, the dark or the light? I don't know, I kind of like them both. I like the idea of having them both, especially because we have an upcoming little craft fair thing happening here in Flint Hill, Missouri, and Nicole got us a booth there, and she wants some stuff to sell. Now, I don't think I'm gonna make a ton of money on these things, but ultimately, I think this makes a great gift, and I think as long as the price is low enough, lots of people would want to see one of these on the fireplace or on a cabinet inside the house. Really, really cool concept. So hopefully you'll build some. Now, I do want to mention that you have to keep in mind with batching out that there's a point where the reality hits. So I had this, all these great ideas of how many of these things we could batch out. I mean, one is fairly simple to make. 50 can't be that hard. So now I have nearly 50 blanks, and thankfully I've got a couple of friends coming over to help me batch some of these things out because I will never have these done in time. It's just too many. So anyway, don't get out of control with the batching out, but good luck if you decide to build one of these. Happy holidays. We'll see you next time. Get off my cord. Get off my cord. No. 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 Probably should not have encouraged that.